Greetings, Business Management 1 students, be it BEC112F or BEC121 students. Today we are looking at Human Resource Management, which is Chapter 12 of our module. So I will go through this chapter with you, and where necessary, you will be free to interact with us on Blackboard so that we can also attend to your questions. So these are the learning outcomes of the course. So in terms of the chapter outline, we'll provide an introduction. Then we'll discuss about the relationship between line management and human resource in the human resource department. Then we'll also look at human resource planning, finding talent, which is basically recruitment. Then from recruitment, we're also looking at developing that talent. How do we develop the people that we have in the organization? We will also look at retaining talent, not just to develop talent so that those people will move to other organizations, but how do we retain them so that they continue working for our organization and for the benefit of our organizations or for our enterprises. We will also look at motivating employees. What motivates them? How do we motivate them? And in this case, we will also take you back to the theory that you looked at in Chapter 1, which was the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We will then look at the labor legislation that has an impact at the workplace. So I understand this is also a tutorial task, the labor legislative acts that have an impact at the workplace. This also ties in with what we covered in Chapter 4 when we looked at the legislative acts that has an effect on the workplace, whereby we were saying the environment in which a business operates can actually affect how they operate. We look at legislation there. So we'll now look at the legislative acts that has an impact at the workplace. Maybe before we proceed, it's important to just look at what one of the renowned HR practitioners once said, Jeffrey Pfeffer, who said, what actually separates successful organizations from those that are not successful, or what gives other organizations competitive advantage over their competitors, or what makes other organizations better than other organizations, is actually how they treat their human capital, how they treat their human planning or their human resource planning. So people are a very key resource in any organization. If you treat people well, if you treat your employees well, you can actually gain a competitive advantage as an organization. That will make you to actually perform better than other organizations. Basically, we are saying if you treat people well, those people or those employees will will actually do their best. They will put in all their effort to ensure that the organization becomes a success. However, if you do not treat them well, they may actually work against the organization. So it is important in HR to actually recruit the right people, select the right people, develop people in our organizations, and also to motivate people. So now I will look at the relationship between line management and the HR department. The HR department, this is that function in an organization that we can actually see as a strategic partner. So it is the function in an organization that deals with human resources issues. So maybe let me follow what is on your slide, where we are saying HR functions as a strategic partner in support of other functions, like your operations function, your marketing function, purchasing and supply, and so forth. The HR function improves skills base of employees and contributes to the profitability of the organization. So it also works as a strategic partner in the attainment of organizational goals or objectives. Every manager in the organization should realize the importance of recruitment, selection, training and development, rewarding, assisting and motivating employees. Integration and teamwork are essential for organizational success. So now, in looking at the relationship between line management and HR department, it's important to come back to this point where we are saying every manager in the organization, be it a manager in the HR function or a manager in the operations or production function, a manager in the marketing function, or in whatever function that we may think of, every manager, for as long as they are subordinates that report to you, you should realize the importance of recruitment, selection, training, developing, rewarding, assisting, and also motivating employees. Because every manager works with people. So there are other managers who do not necessarily fall under the HR function, but they have people that report to them. They also have authority over other people. So every line manager has to have people skills. Every line manager has to be in a position to understand people and to treat people well, to motivate people. They must also understand issues of recruitment, selection, training and development, rewarding people, and so forth. HR management and organizational effectiveness. Effective organizations, as we understand from planning, they must have a vision, a mission, strategy, organizational structure, and human resources. So people are very, very important. Successful companies have the following HR management attributes. So these are some of the attributes that separate successful companies or successful organizations from those that may not be successful. Primary benefits. Primary benefits, these are also known as monetary benefits. These are also known as monetary benefits. They include your obvious pay, that pay that every employee expects, or the salary or the wages. We also talk of pensions. They also form part of monetary benefits. We can also speak of those shares that you may receive from an organization as a monetary benefit, like share options that may be offered to you as an employee. Then there are also what are known as secondary benefits. These are non-monetary benefits. For example, some benefits that you may be offered, like a company car, a company house, and so forth, which may not necessarily be monetary benefits. So both primary benefits and secondary benefits, they play a key role in motivating people. They also play a key role in ensuring the general welfare of the employees. Training and development is a key attribute also for successful organizations, whereby once you have your employees, once you have managed to select right employees, you also need to train them so that they have the key competencies that are needed for the execution of their duties. You should also continue to provide employees with development opportunities whilst they are in your organization, whilst they are working in your organization. That way, they actually see the reason to stay in your organization for as long as they see opportunities for growth. This we will also look at it when we look at some of the content theories of motivation. That the issue of growth, the issue of development is actually very, very important for most employees. Career development, employees, they also look up to career development. Once I start even as a junior member of staff in the organization, are there opportunities for me to develop career-wise? Will it be in the same organization or I will need to move? Then also the issue of company culture and diversity. So it is important that you also read these attributes and understand them. In the prescribed textbook, the 10th edition, you will find these on page 331, 331. The contribution of HR to organizational effectiveness basically revolves or should include assisting everybody to reach their goals. The human resource function should be in a position to assist people in the organization to reach their goals. This is issues of development, issues of career development. Also, efficient use of skills and abilities. Once we know that the people that we recruited have these particular skills, how best can we deploy those skills in the organization? This is also in line with assigning staff to responsibilities. Training and motivating employees. Training your people so that they gain key competencies, key skills. Also motivate people so that they can perform their tasks willingly without being coerced, but they have that inner desire to perform their tasks. Job satisfaction and self-actualization, to ensure that everyone is satisfied, everyone is happy with whatever they are doing in the organization, and also that people have that opportunity to seek for personal growth, to seek for tasks that challenge them. That's self-actualization. Desirable quality of working life, maintaining ethical policies and social responsible behavior, managing change to the mutual advantage of both individuals and the public. So executing HR functions in a professional manner, and the involvement in strategic decision making and strategy formulation, which is also key for people and for motivating employees. We will also look at HR planning. And for HR planning, I think it's important to understand the definition. What is HR planning? So in your textbook, the 10th edition, HR planning is defined as a process of using organizations' goals and strategy to forecast the organization's human resource needs in terms of finding, developing, and keeping qualified human resources. So human resource planning can be divided into 3 phases. And these are the phases that we're talking of. Phase 1 is basically to identify the work that is being done in the organization. Phase 2 is concerned with human resource forecasting. Then phase 3, that's where we do the human resource plan. So in terms of identifying work being done in the organization, we look at 3 processes. One being job analysis. Job analysis is basically the process that is used to investigate the tasks, duties, and responsibilities of a job in an organization. Then job description. This is generally the written format, listing the contents of the job. Then there's also job specification, which details the knowledge, the skills, the abilities or competencies that are relevant for the job. So that will be your phase 1. Then phase 2 is basically human resource forecasting. Here you try to forecast the human resource needs of an organization. What will we need in the near future? What will we need in terms of human resources in the near future? So factors to consider for human resource forecasting, they include issues of economic growth. So if we assume, or if we think of, or if we have information that in the near future or in future there will be economic growth, that may also mean that our organization may also have opportunities for growth. And once that is the case, it will mean we will need more people to work in our organization. It will mean that we need more people to work in our organization. Assuming the reverse is true, we are assuming that there will be an economic recession. What would that mean to our organization? It may also mean that we may need to cut on some jobs. Some people may need to go. So the issue of economic growth is very, very important. Because if there is a possibility of economic growth, it may also translate to economic opportunities in the organization. But if it's an economic recession, it may also mean that there may be threats in the organization, and we may not be able to sustain the workforce that we have. Another factor to look at is new developments in the business. What are we planning as an organization? Are we planning to close some of the branches? Are we planning to open some of the branches? So if we are planning to open some of the branches, obviously we will need more people. We must plan for more human resources. But if you are planning to close some of the branches or some of the work units, definitely we may also need to let other people go. So we must also plan for that. The other factor that we should also look at is the labor market, the cost of labor. How easy is it to access labor supplies? People who want to work. Are they demanding? What are they demanding? So issues also of minimum wage, they may come into play. So you must always understand that there is an effect. Whenever a minimum wage is set, there is an economic effect of that minimum wage. It will mean that it can actually reduce the number of people that an organization will be able to hire. So do not take the knowledge that we have from microeconomics for granted. We will need it in this course. We will need it even going forward with other business management modules such as operations management, human resources management, as well as marketing management. Then phase 3, this is the human resource plan. And purpose of this plan is to provide concrete guidelines and steps that indicate how business short-term, medium-term, and long-term human resource requirements can be provided for. So basically, this answers the question which is to say, what must we do today to be prepared for tomorrow? What should we do today to prepare for tomorrow? Now we're looking at finding qualified workforce, finding qualified talent. And basically this speaks to recruitment, issues of recruitment. So whenever we speak of recruitment, we must know that recruitment basically revolves around finding qualified talent or finding qualified workforce. So how do we find a qualified workforce? How do we find a qualified workforce? So recruitment recruitment can be from inside the organization or from outside the organization. So recruitment can be from inside, it can also be from outside. There are advantages and disadvantages of these. Recruitment from inside and recruitment from outside. So you can find talent within the organization. You can also find talent outside the organization. So Normally, recruitment from inside is done for purposes of giving other people the chance or the opportunity to grow. Assuming there is an opportunity at a senior position level, you can actually look at the junior staff members. If there is anyone with the key competencies, anyone who is able to do the job, they can be given the opportunity. But in some cases, organizations can actually prefer to recruit from outside. Mainly if they want new talent, if they want people with new ways of doing things, if they want someone with a different view, they can actually look for talent outside. So one of the advantages of recruitment from inside or looking for talent from within the organization is that people are already aware. They already know how the organization functions. They know the organizational culture. They know what is generally acceptable in the organization. So it will not be much of a challenge for them to do their job. But on the other side, if you recruit from inside, the person that is most likely to fill that position, they are most likely to do what the person who left that position was doing. So if that person was not performing well, the person that you are hiring is most likely to do exactly what that particular person who left was doing. Another advantage also of recruitment from inside is that it can actually be used to motivate staff in the organization. Recruitment from outside, yes, it brings in new talent, yes, it brings in new people with different views, but it can also demotivate the current staff. People who are already working for the organization, they may be demotivated because they will not see opportunities for growth. If other people are coming from outside to take the only opportunities that may be in the organization for growth. Recruitment from outside, it may also lead to other people being sabotaged. Like, okay, I was performing this job, now you have hired someone from outside. Let's see if they will be able to do it. Then everyone will just let them to do it, and they fail. So it can actually lead or cause other people who are disgruntled in the organization to sabotage those that we have been recruited. Recruitment methods, recruitment can be done through advertisements in newspapers and so forth, or through advertisements in other channels. It can also be done through private employment or through recruitment agencies. You can also do recruitment through existing employees. It can also be done through personal approach, which is known as headhunting. Recruitment can also be done through the radios, television, or even the internet. Then there are also other secondary recruitment strategies. For example, where organizations actually approach institutions of higher learning, they present themselves, they also present to let students know the kind or the caliber of people that they are most likely to hire. Then there is also selection. After recruitment, what follows is basically selection. So recruitment is the process of inviting applications. Those people will qualify so that they can apply for the job. So after recruitment, what follows is selection. There is usually a question that we normally ask: do you select the best or do you select the ideal person? And in most cases, students say, no, you select the best. Others say you select the ideal. So sometimes what may be the best for the organization may not be chosen because of the labor legislative acts that we have an impact in the workplace. For example, the Employment Equity Act may actually cause managers to select a certain person who, in their view, may not be the best for the position. But okay, going back to selection or to talent selection, selection is the process of determining which individuals are best suited to fill positions in the organization. And the selection process basically starts with the application and shortlisting of candidates. Then it's followed by intensive assessment, which can take the form of psychological testing or and also a diagnostic interview. Then after intensive assessment, our final selection can be done and followed by onboarding. This you can also read in detail on page 339 of the textbook to understand what is onboarding. What is onboarding? Where one will actually join the organization and start in the organization. There is also need to understand the process of developing talent. Talent will need to be developed in the organization. And it takes what is known as on-the-job training or on-the-job training and development, and also away from the job training and development. On-the-job training and development, these are methods that can be used whilst an employee is actually on the job. So you do not have to take them out of their job setting so that they can gain skills or develop certain competencies. But away from the job training and development, in this case, you will need to take the employee outside of their work setting so that they can gain certain competencies or so that they can be developed. So there are a number of on-the-job training and development methods, and also away from the job training and development methods that you guys will need to know. And these are also clearly provided in your textbook, and you need to understand them. Then there is also what is known as the shotgun approach. What is known as the shotgun approach. With the shotgun approach, the general assumption is that if a certain training or if a certain development program is important for one employee in the organization, then it must be good for everyone. That's why in this case we are saying there is actually the danger of the shotgun approach to development. Because people are generally different, they have different competencies, they require different skills to perform different tasks. So we cannot really assume that once we realize that someone is not able to type in an organization, we must take everyone to a typing course. Or once we realize that someone is not able to speak properly, we must take everyone to a development program where they will be taught to speak. So there is a danger to the shotgun approach, but in most organizations, it is used. So some organizations, you actually use the shotgun approach, but you must understand that there is a danger to that approach. Because it doesn't mean that simply because someone needs development in a certain area, everyone has to be developed in that particular area. People are different, they have different skills, they also need different competencies to perform their tasks. Then there is also the issue of performance appraisal. Performance appraisal, basically the purpose is to determine which aspects of the job the employee has performed exceptionally well, or which aspects of the job has the employee complied with the requirements for the job, or which aspects of the job has the employee not complied with the requirements of the job. So basically that is it for performance appraisal. The good thing about performance appraisal is it provides opportunities for employees to actually get feedback. It provides that opportunity for employees to get feedback from their superiors, to also get feedback even from their peers. And in some cases, it can also provide an opportunity for employees to self-evaluate and see areas where they've performed exceptionally well and areas where they still need to develop. We should also look at compensation. There are compensation is used anyway to retain talent. Because if you do not reward people well, if you do not pay them well, they may look for what they call greener pastures. They leave your organization. No matter how much you have developed them, no matter how much you have invested in them, they can still leave your organization and go elsewhere. So some organizations have actually become training grounds for other organizations. Where someone joins your organization, they gain all the skills, they gain all the experience, then they leave. They leave, they look for what they call greener pastures. So as a manager, you must avoid developing talent for other organizations, because you will always be competing with organizations that are actually benefiting from the talent that you developed. So in terms of compensation of employees, there is what is known as direct compensation, indirect compensation, and rewards. These are very different. These three are different. So direct compensation is the basic salary or wage an employee receives, while indirect compensation, these are the fringe benefits that employees can receive. The other aspect of compensation is reward. That is the recognition of good performance. So direct compensation comes in the form of wages and salaries. Then indirect compensation can come in the form of leave benefits, insurance benefits, car benefits, housing benefits. Then in terms of reward, examples of rewards may be in the form of bonuses, salary increases, cost of living adjustments. Then there are also paid holidays for people to just go and enjoy themselves somewhere else. The amount of compensation, which is also very important, how it is determined. Organizations can do salary surveys to see how much people who are performing exactly the same job in other organizations, how much are they paid, or how are they paid, what benefits do they receive, what rewards do they receive. So you can actually do a salary survey in other organizations. You can also do job evaluation, which is basically internal comparison. Those that are performing these tasks, how much are they, should they be rewarded? How much are they rewarded? Then you determine how much you should pay your employees. Then there's also what is known as factor comparison, where you look at different factors and you determine how much you should pay your employees. We will also look at motivation. And your textbook tells us that employee performance in organizations is determined by three factors: the desire to do the job, which is motivation; the capability to do the job, which is the ability; and the resources available to do the job, which is the work environment. So motivation is very, very important. That desire to do the job is very, very important. Motivation basically refers to factors or to those forces within a person that affect his or her direction, intensity, and persistence of behavior that is within the control of the person. A motivated employee is willing to exert a particular level of effort, that is intensity, for a certain amount of time, that is persistence, towards a particular goal, which we are referring to as the direction. So there are a number. Motivation at the workplace is very, very important, and it's important for managers to understand what motivates people and how are people motivated. And for purposes of this course, we will look at some motivation theories. So first look at content approaches to motivation. Content approaches, they look at the what of motivation. Then we also have what are known as process approaches to motivation, or process theories to motivation, that look at the process or the how of motivation. So the first theory that we look at is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you also looked at in chapter 1, where you guys were saying people have unlimited needs, yet resources are limited. So we'll look at what Maslow said. Then we'll also look at the Aldefar's ERG theory, Hesbeck's two-factor theory, and McClelland's theory of needs. Oh, okay. I thought I had included the explanations for those theories. So, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow came up with a hierarchy of needs, which we covered in chapter 1. And he also made certain assumptions to say every person is moves from one level of need to the other. So I remember in chapter 1 we just said no, the first level of need that comes are your physiological needs, followed by your safety needs or safety and security needs, followed by your esteem needs, then self-actualization needs. But there is an assumption that this guy actually made. So the main contribution of Maslow's theory is that needs are arranged in a hierarchy, where the lowest level needs are psychological needs and the highest level of needs are self-actualization needs. So, according to Abraham Maslow, a person will have to satisfy physiological needs. Not psychological, it's physiological needs. A person will have to satisfy those very basic needs in order to seek or to develop the next level of need, which would then be security or safety needs. So according to him, he was arguing that a person would never seek for security if their basic needs are not satisfied. So a person would never seek for security needs until their basic needs are satisfied. That is to say, if you are to bring it in the work setting, a person would not be concerned about their job security until their physiological needs are satisfied. That is to say, they would rather seek for their salaries to be paid, for their wages to be paid, before they can think of job security. Then the second level of need, obviously, which is job security, which is safety and security need. This need refers to the desire of people to be in an environment that is free of harm, be it physiological, be it physical harm, be it psychological harm or emotional harm. Somewhere where they are safe, where they are not in danger. So he said that need will emerge soon after physiological needs are satisfied. After those safety needs are satisfied, the other level of need will then emerge, which is social needs, which is the desire to relate with other people, the desire to interact with other people, the desire to affiliate or the need for affiliation in an organization. But once that particular need has been satisfied, it will cease to be a motivating factor. That's what he also said. Because another need will emerge, which is esteem needs. These are also known as egocentric needs. They need to be recognized. They need to be celebrated. Once esteem needs have been satisfied, Maslow said they cease to be motivating factors. Another level of need will emerge, which is your self-actualization needs. So the crux of Maslow's theory is that these needs are arranged in a particular hierarchy or in a certain order, where a lower level need has to be satisfied before a higher level need can emerge. He also said once a need has been satisfied, it ceases to be a motivating factor. However, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in as much as it forms the basis for all other content theories of motivation, it was criticized by many, including Aldefa, Hesbeck, as well as McClelland. So Aldefa came in and said, no, these needs cannot be arranged in that particular order. People are different. However, Aldefa identified three needs, which are basically the need to exist, the need to relate, and the need for growth. And he said these needs can emerge in any order, not as was prescribed by Abraham Maslow. But there are similarities to the needs that Aldefa identified with those which were identified by Abraham Maslow. So if you look at Abraham Maslow's lower level needs, which is basically the need for physiological needs and security needs, you will realize that they are basically what Aldefa named existence needs. These are basically what Aldefa named as existence needs. The need to exist. Then what Aldefa named relatedness needs are basically the needs that were identified by Abraham Maslow as the needs to relate, the needs to socialize, the need to affiliate with other people, which are basically your social needs and your esteem needs or your egocentric needs. Then the need for growth, this is what was identified by Abraham Maslow as self-actualization. So the main point that was criticized by Aldefa in this case is basically to say, no, needs cannot be arranged in a particular order because people are different. They have different needs, and those needs emerge at different stages. Then there is also Hesbeck. Hesbeck came up with what is known as the two-factor theory. And in this two-factor theory, he identified what are known as maintenance factors or hygiene factors. These maintenance factors or hygiene factors are also known as demotivating factors. Demotivating factors in the sense that their presence do not motivate people, but their absence can demotivate people. So his argument was you cannot motivate people by a salary, because the moment a person walks in an organization and starts to work, they expect a salary. So that cannot be used to motivate people. It's basically a hygiene factor. It's basically a maintenance factor. But if you do not pay a salary, that can demotivate people. So he was arguing that maintenance factors, or what he named as hygiene factors, do not motivate people, but their absence can demotivate people. Then the other factor that he identified, these are known as motivational factors or growth factors. So motivational factors or growth factors, he argued that these are what can be used to motivate people. What is important in this case is to understand that the lower level needs which were identified by Abraham Maslow, they form part of the hygiene or maintenance factors as identified by Hesbeck. And what Hesbeck identified as the motivating factors are basically the top level needs as was identified by Abraham Maslow. So your very basic physiological needs and security needs and part of the social needs, they actually form part of your maintenance factors or hygiene factors. which cannot be used to motivate people, according to Hesbeck. You are saying, no, you can't use the salary to motivate people. You can't say people should be motivated because they are working in an environment where they cannot be harmed. People, when they leave their homes and come to work, they expect to go back unharmed, safe. So you can't say, no, you need to celebrate because you are not going to die in this organization. That cannot motivate people, because anywhere else where they would work, they do not expect to die. So, the motivating factors, they are those top level needs like your esteem needs and your self-actualization needs, or your growth needs as identified by Audefa. Then there is also McClelland. There are other factors that you also need to look at from Hesbeck. He's the one who also came up with the issue of saying there is what is known as external motivation and internal motivation. Internal motivation and external motivation. So you also need to look at that. Then there is McClelland. McClelland came up with 3 needs that he said these are what motivates people. So basically, these are top level needs as identified by Abraham Maslow. The need for achievement, which is basically a growth need. The need for power, which is also a growth need. And the need for affiliation, which is a social and esteem need. So you realize that the top level needs as identified by Abraham Maslow, McClelland agrees also that they motivate people. But one thing that all these other 3 are criticizing Abraham Maslow for is the fact that the needs cannot be arranged in a particular order. A person cannot wait to have a certain need until one need has been satisfied. So you also ought to be in a position to critique and also to compare these theories. Where do they look the same? Where do they differ? Then there are also what are known as process theories of motivation. And one of the process theories of motivation is the expectance theory by Victor Vroom. This one you ought to read it. It's very, very interesting. It explains how people are motivated. That for someone to do something, they ought to be expectant of something. And there are also concepts in that particular theory which you need to understand. For example, expectance, then also instrumentality and desirability, which is valence, according to Victor Vroom. You need to also read that particular theory. Then there is also what is known as the equity theory and organizational justice. In terms of the equity theory, we are saying people ought to be treated equitably in an organization. And once people are treated equitably, not equally, you can't pay people in the organization the same salary and expect them to be motivated. So you can't treat them equally, but you ought to treat them equitably. There's a difference between equality and equity. Those two are different. So, according to the equity theory, people ought to be treated equitably. And there ought to be organizational justice in the organization. That alone can actually help to motivate people. Then there is also what is known as the goal setting theory and feedback, where you can actually allow people or employees to set their own goals and create an opportunity for them to receive feedback. So that alone can also help to motivate people. There is a concept, I think we covered it in chapter 6, which is known as the management by objectives. This is it is a typical example of the goal setting theory, where you include employees in goal setting. And once they feel that they are part of setting goals, they will be able to, they may be motivated to achieve and to prove that they can be able to do it. So these process theories, you also ought to understand them and to read them in your textbook. There are also other employee motivational strategies that can be used to motivate people. For example, job design, employee involvement programs, management by objectives, entrepreneurial incentives, training and education, recognition programs for employees, empowerment programs, reward systems, career management. But once you state this, you also ought to be in a position to explain how can it be used to motivate people. Then we move on to the labor legislative acts that has an impact at the workplace. This is part of your tutorial task, which you guys are supposed to submit. So we must know that the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa Act, which is number 108 of 1996, is the most important piece of legislation in South Africa. This sets out the structure of the state and also covers the Bill of Rights. And in terms of the Bill of Rights, Section 23 relates specifically to labor rights, the rights that employees have. So there are a number of laws that affect business activities in South Africa. Laws to regulate the form and functioning of business. We have the Companies Act. We looked at the Companies Act in chapter 3, when we looked at the companies as a form of business and also partnerships as forms of business. The Labor Relations Act is also important. Then the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and the Employment Equity Act. So you need to understand the main requirements for these labor legislative acts that we ought to cover in this course. With the Labor Relations Act, the purpose of this act is to give effect to and regulate the fundamental rights contained in the Bill of Rights, and to provide the framework in which employees, their trade unions, and employers organizations can engage in collective bargaining and formulate industrial policy. So we're speaking of collective bargaining. Participants in labor relations, we're talking of the state, the workers and their trade unions, and the employers, which is basically management. So you see the interaction or the relationship of these three participants in the Labor Relations Act. It also provides for communication and grievance, communication in terms of grievances and disciplinary aspects, how grievances ought to be handled, how disciplinary aspects also ought to be handled in an organization. Then there's the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, of which the overall purpose of this particular act is to advance economic development and social justice in the Republic. It also gives effect to and regulate the right to fair labor practices conferred by Section 23 of the Constitution of 1996. It also establishes and enforces the basic conditions of employment and regulates the variation of basic conditions of employment. We also have the Employment Equity Act, of which the main aim of this particular act is to do away with all forms of discrimination in employment in the Republic by promoting equity and non-discrimination in the employment sector. The overall purpose is to achieve equity in the workplace. Not equality, but equity. So it is mainly as a result of the Employment Equity Act that some organizations will now have to ensure that their workforce also reflects the composition of the general population in the area in which they operate. Skills Development Act. In terms of this act, the main aim is to develop the skills of South African human resource planning and to increase the levels of investment in education and training in the labor market. We also have the Skills Development Levies Act with a purpose to provide for the imposition of a skills development levy. Then we also have the NQF Act, and the objective of this act is to create an integrated national framework for learning achievements to contribute to the full development of learners and to enhance the quality of education and training. This is basically the structure of the NQF. To say at level 10, doctoral levels, doctoral degrees should be pitched at level 10, master's degrees at level 9, honors at level 8, and when you guys graduate, your degree should be pitched at NQF level 7. Then there is also the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The main purpose is to protect employees by ensuring a health and safe environment. Then there is also Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act, with an aim, or the aim of this act is based on the principle that compensation will be paid to an employee in an injury, or if an injury has been caused by an accident arising out of and in the course of an employee's employment. There is also the Unemployment Insurance Act. This act provides for the payment of benefits for a limited period to people who are ready and willing to work but are unable to get work for whatever reason, which is also crucial. People are speaking of the Unemployment Insurance Fund, especially during this time of COVID-19, that people should register and claim also if they lost employment, or if they are put on leave for a longer period, which is unpaid. The Employment Services Act is also another act which has an aim to repeal all employment services provisions contained in the Skills Development Act of 1998, and to provide for a range of measures to promote employment and also regulate employment of foreigners. So this act was actually enacted in 2014. Then we also have the Protection of Personal Information Act of 2013. The aim is to give effect to constitutional right to privacy by safeguarding personal information when processed by a responsible party and subject to justifiable limitations. Basically, this was it about this chapter. We ought to appreciate activities associated with the HR function of the organization, recruitment and selection of talent, HR planning and job analysis, also the importance of motivation and how are people motivated, what motivates people. Then also to have an appreciation of the legal environment that influences HR managers and organization. We must also have an appreciation of labor laws that managers and HR practitioners need to implement. So this was it for chapter 12. I encourage each and every one of you to also read the chapter in the textbook so that we will understand it, will raise questions and interact on Blackboard. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best, even as we are going to cover the next chapter, which will be marketing management. You are also advised to read ahead so that when I will be explaining, you also understand. Do not forget to also study operations management, which we already covered. Thank you.